Hello again. Oh, there's an old Neil Diamond song. Hello, my friends. Hello. Hello, my friend. Hello. Well, okay. Hello, my friend. Hello. Um, yeah, we like Neil Diamond. Um, and we saw him perform twice in Buffalo. Both times we had floor seats really up close. He's really, really good. Puts on a great show, or he did. I don't know anymore because I understand he's got touches of Alzheimer's now. What a shame. What a terrible disease. Anyway, um, we want to talk about probably my favorite story of the entire semester. Okay. You already know I'm a Nathaniel Hawthorne fan because we read The Birthmark, and I told you then that I was a Nathaniel Hawthorne fan. Well, Young Goodman Brown goes more deeply into what I think Nathaniel Hawthorne is really all about. It is an intense story. Um, and it's certainly not a simple story. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time here giving you a pretty good idea, giving you a little bit of a synopsis of that story, kind of an overall evaluation. Although there are big questions in that story that I am not going to answer for you because you know that's not what we feel literature is all about. It's you finding your own answers to the questions. Well, in this story, I have to tell you, some of the questions are the biggest questions you will ever encounter because they are questions about who you might think you are. No, who you are. Yeah, they're questions about who you are, what your beliefs are, what your values are. Um, so they're heavy duty questions, okay? And you'll see that as you get into the story. So I am not going to try to answer any of those questions for you. I will be looking for you to come up with answers on your own. So, Young Goodman Brown is set in Salem, Massachusetts. Ding ding, Salem. Okay. In 1692. Ding ding, Salem. 1692. So you know it's set in the time of the time that the witches' Sabbath. I'm sorry, witches' trials took place in Salem. Okay, um, and actually in Salem, we had people who came there to practice their religion. They taught us in school that they came for religious freedom. That's not true. They came so that they could practice their own religion. And if you didn't practice their religion, they kicked you out of Salem. Okay? That's the reality. So that's not freedom, you know? So the concept that we were all taught is a falsehood. Okay, so anyway, these people obviously had religion as a major part of their life, you know? And as I explained in the lesson, when they first came in the 1620s, um, they really weren't prepared for it, you know? And so they formed kind of a socialist type government, all for one, one for all, you know? And we've seen time after time after time that doesn't work, okay? But maybe they were a little too soon to realize that, okay? So they came with 104 people. A year later, 52 of those 104 were dead, and most of them had starved to death. Okay, so obviously this idea of one all for one and one for all wasn't going to work, and it never does. Okay, a socialist communist kind of society just it's like it doesn't take into account human nature. it creates an idealistic form of human nature where everybody will give their best. That's not going to happen. Okay? And it didn't happen for these folks. Even though there were only 104 of them and they all came together and for a common purpose. Even so. So, a year later, Governor Bradford decided he was going to break the colony up into, or the city up into separate parcels of land. Shouldn't call it a city because, you need stuff to have a city, and they really didn't have anything other than their own huts and such. Okay, so he gave everybody their own parcel of land, and people had their own cabins. Okay, I shouldn't have said huts, but they had cabins. They had built cabins, and so everybody had their own parcel of land, and so they took care of their families rather than everybody trying to take care of everybody. You know, the family in this house took care of the family in this house, and the family in this house took care of the family in this house, etc., etc. They all got together. I mean, they all enjoyed each other's company and everything as much as they could because they were struggling for survival. So, but people made a point to take care of themselves, and then if somebody wasn't able to take care of themselves, they'd help out too. I'm not saying that they didn't have any kind of charitable feeling or friendly feeling because that just wouldn't be the case. Okay, so anyway. The community started to thrive, really thrive. Okay, and so they, because of the way they had come here, they needed to keep God in their world. And from some of your own experience that we go to God when we need Him. We need Him all the time, every minute, every day, but we don't think of that. It's like you have a big test tomorrow and you haven't been studying the way you should, and so you say, "Please, God, please help me with this test." And I'll never leave myself in this kind of situation again. I promise. I'll do my work all the time so I never get left behind again. We've all been there, done that. And then you take the test, and whether you pass or fail, you kind of forget about that promise you made to God, and you go on with your normal way of life. And so for these people, their way of life was getting good, and so the role of God was diminishing. And to some degree, they were struggling to keep God in their lives because they didn't feel like they needed Him as much as they did before. So their overall theme got to be work hard, get ahead for the greater glory of God. And if you were successful, it meant that you were praising God and God was showing His favor on you. Okay? So, that way they were able to keep God in their world. But as they became more and more successful, that role of God shrank even more. It kind of went to work hard, get ahead. Work hard, get ahead. Okay. And then a ways down the road, when we got to the 1680s and 1690s, they started to realize what they had done, minimizing the role of God, and there were some revivalist preachers that came and tried to re-enthuse them about their religion. And so, some of them started to really realize, holy cow, we aren't what we're acting like. Okay. So they realized there was a certain hypocrisy in their way of life. Okay. So hypocrisy, and that's how hypocrisy got to be such a topic for Goodman Brown. And so, you go into these witchcraft trials of 1692, and obviously that whole thing is so filled with hypocrisy. People saying, "I'm better than you because," all this kind of stuff. So, and they put people to death, and they put people on trial, and some of the trials were death sentences. Just the trials themselves were death sentences. So, all of this guides Hawthorne's thinking because Hawthorne lived in Salem, Massachusetts. Okay, so he creates the story that helps recreate what Salem, Massachusetts was like in the 1690s. So that's kind of like background. Okay, in the story Goodman Brown, we have the main character, young Goodman Brown, and he's a newlywed. His wife is named Faith, and there's certainly an importance to that name. She's Faith with a capital letter, but she's also, in Goodman Brown's mind, kind of the cornerstone of his faith with a small letter. Okay, and at the beginning of the story, Goodman Brown tells Faith that he has to go off on a journey into the forest. He has an appointment, and so he has to go. Faith isn't very happy about this, and she says, "This one night above all others, can't you stay here with me? You know, I've had such dreams and such." So it's like, oh, what's going on with Faith? Okay, setting the scene. Now, in this story, you hear some thee and thou and that kind of stuff. Don't let that disturb you. Okay, in our English today, we say you. You that English is a constantly changing language. So when I was young, the word text meant, like a book. Well, this might be a textbook. Okay. So you use the term text. Well, today, by and large, text means what you do with your thumbs. Okay. Same word, but it has evolved. That's a living language. English is a living language. So that thee and thou and prithee, those kind of words, they're not Old English. They are not old. They are modern English. But keep in mind that thee and thou mean you. Okay, and prithee means please. Okay, so there's not a lot of that kind of stuff. Don't let it distract you. It doesn't have to confuse you. It's not difficult. Okay, so don't let it distract you, and don't think in terms of this is Old English. I can't do it. No. The story was only written, 150 years ago. It's the same language we speak, but he sets it back in 1692, and he uses those terms to make it authentic. Okay, so Goodman Brown goes on this journey, even though his wife is saying no, but he goes, and he says, "This one night above all others, don't worry, I'll be back." Okay. Well, he goes off into the forest, and first of all, dark forest, but we'll talk about that next week. And he meets a person in the forest, and the person in the forest says, "You're late, Goodman Brown. When I passed Old North full 15 minutes ago, the clock was striking 6. And he was obviously supposed to be there at 6. Well, even in today's world, unless you have a helicopter, you can't get from Old North Church to Salem in 15 minutes. Okay? It's not going to happen. So you know that this is not a mere mortal that you're dealing with. Okay? And it doesn't take long in talking to realize that Goodman Brown has met the devil in the forest. Okay, so the devil throws different kinds of trials at him, and as you're reading this story, keep in mind that Goodman Brown is dealing with the devil, the master of delusion, the greatest liar in the world. Okay, the devil tries to make everything seem good when in fact everything that he has anything to do with is the cornerstone of evil. Okay, Goodman Brown gets taken in by all of this. The devil refers to his family, and you'll see that in the story. And I don't want to go into too much detail. And then his religion teacher comes, and Goodman Brown hides, and his religion teacher comes. Well, and talks to the devil and recognizes the devil. And it's like the two of them almost carry on a conversation. Goodman Brown is pretty shaken by this because here's the woman who taught him his catechism, and she's on, in a sense, a first name basis with the devil. And then Goodman Brown stops, and then there's this noise overhead, and he thinks he hears Faith's voice. And at the beginning of the story, they had told us Faith had pink ribbons on. These pink ribbons come floating down. So Goodman Brown feels Faith must have gone overhead. And of course, how else would you be going overhead in 1692 but on a broomstick? Okay. That's how witches fly. So he's upset. And so he goes on to this witch's Sabbath, which is where he was supposed to have been going in the first place. Okay, and so at the witch's Sabbath, everybody from the town is there. Everybody, he's sure he sees his mother, and he's sure he sees his father, and all the good shrank not from the wicked, which shocked him. Okay, the lowlifes were there, and all the good people were there, and the devil, of course, is there, um, and tempts Goodman Brown and Faith, because Faith is there too, to be sworn into to the covenant of witches. And there's some great lines in there. You really have to read them. They are great lines. Okay, so um, at the last minute, Goodman Brown says, "Faith, Faith, look up to heaven and resist the evil one." You know, and then it's all gone. Okay, and then you'll read in there what happens to Goodman Brown after that. I don't want to tell you the whole story, okay? Because there's something really critical, and in fact, it has to do with the question that's for this week's essay. So that gives you a little bit of background on the story, and it's like read it kind of carefully so that you can understand what it's about. You can't read it as quickly as you do a frivolous kind of story, because it is pretty intense. I mean, let's face it, we're dealing with the nature of mankind. In fact, at one point, you'll see the devil says, evil is the nature of mankind. Okay. In fact, that takes us to your video question for this week. I want your thought, your opinion, in only a couple sentences on whether you think evil is the nature of mankind. Okay? Yeah, why or why not? It is, here's why, or it is not, here's why. But only a couple of sentences. Okay? So text me those before you submit your essay. Okay? And then, the lesson in there gives you a lot of background on the Puritans in general. And then the question is very, very specific. So read the question very carefully because it really delves into kind of the basis of what we as humans, God created humans, are all about. Okay? So, intense week. Yeah, I know, a little different from the usual thing. But hey, we got to have some fun too. So, anyway, you have a great week. If you need me, contact me. You know where to get me. Take care, everybody.